Hi, how are you?
Hello, Professor. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Kitmani Lasawung. So I am a visiting scholar and I also got the funding from ANRCB project to working on like a small grant for working on adolescent food preference. I also the PhD candidate in local ownership. So as the aspiring researcher, I am keen and leaning from experienced scientists like yourself. Specifically, I am interested in gaining insight into becoming a successful researcher and establish a strong research network and foundation on my hometown, like my home country, like Laos. So, thank you so much for taking time today, Professor Salif. Uh, could you please introduce yourself and your work?
Sure. My name is Gerald Shively. I'm a professor of agricultural economics at Purdue University.
Okay. So you also are dean of Purdue University and you also working in the policy oriented research as well, right?
Yes, so I'm also the associate dean and director of our Office of International Programs in the College of Agriculture, and
Yeah.
have spent most of my career working on issues related to food security in um, Africa and Asia.
Okay. Before we start talking more, can I ask your consent to recording the video? I think it's already recording. It's okay for
Yeah,
you?
I think it's recording.
Yes, yes. It's okay if we can use the video to release to the INCACB project.
Yeah, it's fine.
Platform. Yes, yes.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, so very interesting. Uh, so thank you for giving opportunity for us to discuss with you. So can you tell me a little bit how did you get started in your research career?
Yeah, so originally, when I graduated from college, I wasn't working in academia. I was working for a company in the private sector. Um, but I found that a lot of the things that I was most interested in when I was working at the company was finding answers to questions. I think that's
Mm,
really important for those who want a research career. You have to be interested in questions and seeking answers to those questions. So when I was in my early 20s, I traveled extensively in Asia, and that really kind of got the wheels in my head turning. I visited India and Nepal, and those visits got me very interested in questions about how countries develop economically, and I became very
mm,
interested in the role of agriculture in economic development. Eventually, that led me to working as a research assistant at Cornell University, and that's when I
mm,
really began to build up my research skill set. Then I went to graduate school at the University of Wisconsin, and while working on my PhD, I spent a year conducting field work in the Philippines. Um, I really enjoyed
mm.
that experience, especially working with teams of researchers, all different skills and perspectives to the work. So that was really the start of my research career, which gradually expanded over time. And I've been working now as a researcher for more than 30 years. But most of my
Mm.
success came from having really good mentors and really good collaborators all along the way.
Yeah. So about the good mentor and good collaborator, can you explain a little bit like how to keep the networking when sometime when we know some people and how to do next to keep the like a networking or collaborate continue for a long time?
Right. So I think that it's the case that to be successful as a researcher in the long run, you really have to be able to work with other people. And
Yes.
it's often very hard to know in advance who you'll be working with. So I think it's
Mm.
very important to um, spend your time, especially as a young researcher, trying to build your network, go to conferences, talk to people.
Mm,
Even if you don't have a specific research activity at that moment, there could be something in the future, and you don't know where those
yes.
opportunities are going to come from. So it's really important
Mm,
to kind of build your research network. Uh,
yes.
you can't just be shy. If you're shy and you stay at home, then the
Mhm.
opportunities will never find you.
Yeah, I agree that even we don't have like anything to show in conference, maybe just show up yourself and then learn what people doing, and then we can get some idea from, right? And
Yeah.
before start the research project, so especially you, so you working in agriculture and also the like a policy as well, so where you typically get your research idea or concept from, actually? Yeah.
Well, I think that most academic research is very incremental in
Mm,
nature. We make very, very small steps. Maybe
mm,
someone tries to answer a question. Maybe it's another researcher, or maybe it's you yourself. And once you get the answer, there's still some room for doubt, or some room for interpretation or misunderstanding. Most research, even if it's really good research, it leaves a gap of some sort, which then needs to be filled. So
mm,
most research leads to new questions. And so,
mm,
the best way to get research ideas is to read other people's research, or to go to
mm,
conferences, to meet people who are working actively on research questions, and to find out what kinds of research questions might be unanswered. But that aside, I think that being in the field and talking to practitioners is very helpful in finding research questions. So whether you're talking to farmers, or you're talking to families or project partners, all of them can be the source of good research questions. In fact,
mm.
several of
Yeah.
the most interesting research questions that I've worked on have come up when I've been talking with non-academics. Farmers and families face a lot of challenges and constraints, and it's
Yes.
useful to know what those challenges are and what might help them overcome the constraints that they face. I
Mm-hmm.
think that often we really don't know the important research questions until we've gotten out of our offices and into the field, talking to the
Yes.
people who really need the answers and the solutions that research can provide.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to go to see the real situation, right? Like a real problem, what is issue is, right? And
Right.
give your experience in policy-oriented research. What advice would you give to someone interested in pursue a research career focused on real-world impact? Because sometimes when we do the research, but the research is just the paper or publication if we not use it for the policy, right? Yeah.
Right. I think that it's when you're studying policy in particular, it's very important not, as a researcher, to not advocate for a particular policy. We might
Mm,
identify policies that are problematic, but policymakers often have uh, a lot of different reasons for enacting the policies that they do. I think our role as researchers is to look at alternatives and the consequences that are associated with those alternatives. So,
mm,
what kinds of policies are available, and what would be the likely
yes.
impact of those policies? I think when we as researchers begin to advocate for a particular policy, then we lose our credibility with policymakers. I think it's really important to
Mm,
try to be objective, and to simply focus our attention on understanding the situation, understanding the alternatives that are available, and trying to measure as well as we can what the likely consequences of those alternative policies might be.
Mhm. So it means that when it's kind of the communication, right? When we found something interesting that might solve the problem in the reality, and then we propose to the, but it's not our job to do the policy, but we just tell the policy maker or someone that like a stakeholder to do to consider about that. But we also propose the additional like a alternative option, like a many option as well, right?
Right. I
Do you
think
mean like that?
policymakers want to know what their options are, what the alternatives
Yes.
are, and what the impact of those alternatives are likely to be.
Yeah, but I think it should be kind of preparation and also communication as well. So to convince the policymaker to for the making some policy that we think that might have the impact to society or community. So how do you prepare or how do you uh go to that state? Can you explain a little bit?
Uh, I think that there are a lot of opportunities, alternatives available to researchers for engaging with policymakers, um, often in written form, but we have to be careful and remember that policymakers are very busy and they may not
Yes.
have the time to read a 20 or 30-page research article. So I think it becomes very important to try to communicate in a very succinct way, maybe with a one-page policy brief.
Uh, yes.
Sometimes that is hard for a researcher to do because we want to explain everything in detail, but often policymakers need to uh, uh, focus their attention on many things, and communicating briefly with them in a short sort of message is often the best way.
Mm. So this is the what is the one that you use a lot? So the policy brief in paper or which one?
I think policy briefs are good. I think that it's also useful if policymakers can be engaged at the start, and if there are ways to reach out to policymakers and engage them, like in meetings or in seminars or in conferences where they might be uh, open to ideas.
Okay, so like some short discussion also be useful, right? Like some pitching or some yes, the short event. But we have to have that skill. I think I'm yeah.
Right.
And then to back to your research work, to conduct the research, what are something that you wish you had to know when you are first start and at your working, but you just have recently discovered and that is useful.
Yeah, so as I said before, I think that in the long run, uh, successful research careers require that we work with others. And I think
Mm,
early in my research career, I was focused on my own research and maybe working
yeah.
a little bit too much in isolation. I think that
Oh.
over time, I've come to discover that many of the most rewarding and impactful research activities come from working with others and working in groups.
Yeah, that is nice discover because when we working too many people, so we have many idea come up, right? It's the kind of exchange, how to work, how to collaborate as well, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And sometimes
that
when we're
is
young researchers, we think, oh, I have this idea and I want to keep the idea to myself because I don't want someone else to steal
to
my
took that.
idea. But
Yeah.
but I think that research questions benefit from uh, having some kind and having other people view and comment on the work that we're doing. So it's important to present your work at conferences and in settings where other people can offer helpful advice and suggestions.
Yeah, that is good. Good discover. And then the last question. So, what advice would you offer to young researcher who just starting their career?
Yeah,
Yeah,
advice. Well, I think I'd offer three pieces of advice. The
maybe we
first,
need more advice. Yeah.
yeah, the first piece of advice, as we've discussed already, is to build your research
Yes.
network, to work with others, to go to meetings, to engage with other researchers. Like I said before, you never know what opportunities might arise. And if you're shy and you stay at home, those opportunities will never find you. So you have to be out there meeting other people. That's the first piece of advice. The second
Yes.
piece of advice is to always emphasize doing quality research and being ethical
Mm,
in your work and your dealings with others.
yes.
I think
It is
a long,
important.
a long career can be cut short by misbehavior. In the end, the most important thing you have to you as a researcher is your reputation. So you need to be careful about maintaining your research reputation, doing good work.
Reputation. Okay.
Yeah, because once you lose your reputation, then it's difficult to rebuild it. I guess the
Mm,
message there is say yes to others when you can, but if you're going to say yes, then you need to be prepared to follow through. So that's my second piece of advice. Emphasize quality and always be ethical in your work and in your dealings with other people.
yeah. So, can you explain a little bit about reputation? Is mean like we the research that we do is have to keep on track what the goal is, right? Or
Right,
what do you think? Can you explain
right.
more about this?
Well, and if you if you're cutting corners or if during data collection you take shortcuts and the data are not
Uh,
always as reliable as they should be, then that means the research is not going to be of high quality. And so in the end, you as a researcher are going to be judged on the basis of the quality of your research. And so it's better to do a few things very well than to do a lot of things poorly. Um, but
yes,
I
that
do
is
have
good
one
advice.
final piece of advice. I guess my third piece of advice is for a young researcher to remain curious and
Mm,
flexible to new things, to new ideas, to new perspectives, because I think you can only be successful as a researcher in the long run if you maintain enthusiasm for what you're doing. And maintaining enthusiasm often means trying new things and remaining curious.
mm. Do you have some advice, more advice to Laos, specific for Laos? So no another country, maybe because Laos is like a very unique
Sure.
characteristic, right? And then
Yeah.
do you
So,
think, yeah,
so I think that many times as a young researcher, we can feel overwhelmed because
mm,
maybe there are uh, lots of things that we want to do, lots of problems to solve, lots of topics that require investigation. Um, and it can feel like if we're not solving all of the problems, that what we're doing doesn't matter. But
mm,
I think that there are lots of researchers working in lots of areas, and you don't have to
mm,
do everything. You don't have to answer every
yeah,
question. Don't have to solve every problem. What's important is to pick an important problem, an important issue,
the
and work on
priority
it
one.
and try to make progress on that. And keep in mind that
Mm,
other people will be working on other problems. So don't get discouraged.
yes, that is good advice. Yes. Okay, so thank you so much, Professor Shively, to taking time to discuss with us. I hope the audience especially young researcher will enjoy. So I really enjoy the discussion with you. And yeah, and hope we have more information to share
Yeah.
after this. Yeah.
Thank,
So
thank you. Thank you for the
yeah,
conversation. I enjoyed it.
yeah. I hope the young researcher and young people will enjoy it too. Yeah. Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.